Cool. So we're going to be talking about energy. We're going to particularly be talking about how we relate to energy, and things that we can do things that we can do about it, right? So, like I said, I'm with the Energy Democracy Alliance. The Energy Democracy Alliance is a coalition of 27 organizations advancing a just and participatory transition to a resilient, localized, and democratically controlled clean energy economy in New York State. One of our initiatives is to democratize the energy system, and to do that, we need to then democratize information. So a lot of our members created this Energy 101 toolbox, which is what this training's from, and we try to do these trainings to explain the energy system to people. And this information is open to anybody. So if anybody wants to have this training again, there's a bunch of different modules for this training. If y'all want to have it for other groups, it's always accessible. My email is right there. We can do this. If y'all want to learn how to give this presentation, whatever, we can do this. It's open for everybody. So y'all have National Grid, right? Don't let me feel like I lied. Okay, cool. I'm going to, how do I get back to the chat? There it is. I'm going to share a link to a sample National Grid bill. But if you're sitting at your kitchen table and your National Grid bill happens to be sitting there, feel free to open it. It's very similar to this bill. Probably the price is a little different because they always make the sample bills pretty low. But we're going to use this sample bill for the training moving forward. And some things that we're going to concentrate on are the delivery and the supply section, right? So, and why I start with energy bills is because that's where people connect with the energy system first, right? Most people, y'all might be different because y'all got Kelly as a leader and y'all might be all up in National Grid's face, but not everybody, even knows who the utilities are. Not everybody knows the system and who runs it and who owns it. Most people, they know the energy system starting with their bill. So when y'all get a bill, what's the first thing you do? What's the first thing you look at?
I'd say I always look at the price. How much is this going to set me back?
The bottom line. Any other answers? What do y'all look at? Do y'all actually read and look at the items on the bill? No, I do this training and I still don't, like, ain't nobody got time for that. I generally only look at what's like above the fold. So like what is at the first part when I don't have to open it. I look at how much I owe, when it's due, and maybe the previous balance, because maybe I ain't paid the month before. Those are the things that I look at. Sometimes when if my bill's outrageous, I might look at the little graph on the side, but generally I just look at, that's what most people look at, right? So we're going to look at some of the important itemized sections. So what's on the bill, right? So our bill has electricity and it has methane gas. Those are the two things. Sometimes gas isn't on your bill, and that's because, you might heat your house with heating oil or kerosene or wood. And so that's not that's not on your bill, a part of that utility, right? You might get a separate bill for that. For example, for my utility, I only get electricity. I sadly currently heat my home with heating oil, so I get a separate bill from another heating oil company. So we're gonna start with electricity, right? So how does electricity get to us? Some people know this, some people don't, right? So in most electricity in New York is generated through large power plants, also known as centralized power plants. And these can be nuclear, gas, wind, whatever. And the electricity generated at the plants is transported via large transmission lines. And then those are transported to utility distribution systems, and then those are transported to smaller lines and then to our homes. And that's how that works. Some people have, either solar or wind, and for people that own that goes directly to their homes. It doesn't go through the distribution. People that have community solar, it goes straight to the distribution, and then it goes to the people's homes. And that's how that works for that. So where does New York's energy, like how is this comprised? Where does it come from? So most of the energy in New York comes from nuclear, methane gas, and hydroelectricity, with a very small amount and an increasingly declining amount of coal, with a small amount, but hopefully maybe increasing amount of solar and wind. And then there's some imported renewable energy that gets put into the grid. Now we're going back to the bill. We're back here. Does the link for the bill work for y'all?
Yes.
Cool. So some sections I want you to pay attention to, like I said, we're going to be talking about the delivery section and the supply section. We're going to start with the supply section first. Also note that the supply section for this sample bill is $14.20. And the delivery section for the bill for electricity is $39.52, right? That's more than double. Just keep that in mind. Another part of the bill that we're going to look at, I believe, is on page 3. Might be different on your bills, but we're going to be talking about the itemized section of the supply section, which is electricity supply, merchant function, and ESRM. So what are electricity supply charges? Like, what is that? So supply charges is the actual payment for electricity we use, right? So we're only using that much amount of electricity. And where they get that number from is they do meter readings at your home. Or you could submit your own meter readings, but usually the utility comes out to your home. They say every month, but like they don't be doing it every month. They be estimating sometimes. They come out to your home, at least my utility does. They come out to your home, they look at your meter, and then they can see the usage that you use. So the supply charges do not directly go to the utility. It goes to the people generating the electricity. It goes directly to, it's the payment that goes to the nuclear plants, the hydro plants, things like that. Also, if you, on page 3 where it has the itemized sections, there are things like merchant function. And the merchant function is a small payment that the utility gets in the supply charges just for linking y'all up. They get a fee just for being the connect. That's the only way I can make it into real terms. And then there's the ESRM, which is adjustments that go up and down based on the difference between how much the utility paid for electricity and what they recover from ratepayers previously. So who owns, who are the supply owners? Those are the people that do the generation, right? Most people don't know who these companies are. There's Exelon, there's New York Power Authority. These are the generators that create the power for electricity. These big guys, they make a lot of money. So how do they make their money? How do they set the prices? And this is like super complicated, and usually this slide is broken up into like multiple slides, but I try to make it as simple as possible, which is still kind of hard. So about half of the electricity in New York is sold through bilateral contracts between the distribution utility, which is for you guys, National Grid, and the generator. So that can be New York Power Authority, right? The rest is sold through a competitive market, which is operated by the New York Independent System Operator, or NYSO. NYSO is a not-for-profit independent company unaffiliated with any state or federal agency or energy company. The NYSO is led by a board of directors, and the board of directors are governed and comprised of market stakeholders, which and other people related to the generation of electricity. So in English, what that means is that, which is always crazy to me, is that the people making the decisions of how much the electricity costs are the same people that are benefiting from the purchasing of electricity, which is always really weird and messed up. So the NYSO board is even made up of people that like work at nuclear companies and things like that. NYSO uses a uniform clearing price. And this price structure means that this price structure makes sure that all generators at any given time are paid the same. The higher the demand for electricity, the higher the price for electricity that's paid to all the generators. So when one company doesn't get paid more than the other. They're also paid a capacity price, which are payments that go to all generators to keep them around, right? Especially when we need them when during peak use, like the summertime when people use too much electricity. So we talked about the supply charges. Hold on, you guys' faces moved. Can y'all still hear me? Am I still here?
It's still good.
Thank you. Cool. So let's talk about the delivery section. Let's go back to that bill real quick. We're back to that bill, right? So your supply charge is $14.20. And that's comprised of, we just talked about that, that's comprised of the energy that you're actually using. So that means that then the delivery charge, which is double, where does that go? That goes to the utility, right? So that's not for electricity itself. It goes to the utility for the cost of the distribution infrastructure and all other services that the utility provides, right? And there's nothing that you can do about it. I always like to remind people that your utility is a monopoly for most cases. So that means that you don't have the option, right? Let's say you're like, listen, I don't want to pay more than double how much energy I'm using that goes directly to the utility. You don't have an option. Your option is to live in the dark. At that point, there's nothing else for you to do. So delivery charges are paid to the distribution utility, right? Like I said, which is a monopoly. And how this is broken up in a few different categories. One is the basic service charge, and that charge stays the same. It doesn't matter how much energy you use, it kind of stays the same. You can use no energy. So like, for example, when I moved into my house, my first month bill was super low because it really was just the basic service charge because I didn't use electricity yet. So I just had to pay for that. Yes, Sarah, you would have to still pay for the services even if you live in the dark. You'd probably have to live in a home that's like disconnected totally, right? Which is not safe. Then there's the actual delivery charge, which is based per kilowatt hour, based on how much energy that you use, right? They get that from the meter. Then you pay the taxes. We all pay taxes. This is what we do. And then there's the adjustment section. So the adjustment section, what that is about is that the utility is guaranteed to So they set this based on the basic service charge and the per kilowatt charges, right? But if the energy use is lower than expected, they're not going to collect the amount of money that they set in the beginning, and that's the state regulators say that the utility is entitled to. Therefore, then they're allowed to make adjustment charges to make up the difference. And if the electricity is higher than expected, then the bills are decreased. And if it's lower, then they get to add additional charges, more money. And then lastly, there's the system benefit charge, which is a per kilowatt hour charge that's passed to the wonderful state agency, NYSERDA, to fund energy research projects, incentives, energy efficiency, and renewables. That's like totally equitable, and they kind of, aren't mean at all. So who owns this section, right? Who does the delivery? Those are utilities, right? Those are National Grid. For me, I have NYSEG. For Long Island, they have LIPA. Those are those guys, right?
You're talking about also like Con Ed?
Right, Con Ed, right? Those are the owners of the delivery, right? They don't own the actual generation of electricity. They're just getting paid to make sure it gets to you.
I just like the name Con Ed, really
right.
Says a lot about them.
Exactly, it says a lot about them. So most delivery utilities, like National Grid in New York, they're investor-owned utilities. That means that they are accountable to the investors who lend money to them to build capital projects and to receive interest payments on that debt. So their main financial motivation is to make money and capital investments. Their main motivation is to provide an essential need to the people in the fastest and best and affordable way possible. They want to keep their relationship with their investors. They want to keep them happy. And the investors don't even really care about electricity. They just know this is a better way to make money to make more money off their money, right? That's what investors do. Which is sad, but it is what it is for now. So we talked about how the electricity supplies make their prices, and let's talk about how the utilities make their prices for delivery, right? Are you guys doing work on the national grid rate case at all?
Yeah, we're working with a couple other groups. We have a meeting every Monday.
Cool. So y'all know what a rate case is? I'm gonna go over it again.
Folks, might not know.
The rate case, some people compare a rate case to like sausage making because it's just a bunch of different things packed into one. It's very confusing. But I'm gonna try to make it simple, just like the supply charges. So, like I constantly mentioned, the utilities are a monopoly, meaning that they have no competition and they can theoretically charge whatever they want to charge. So what they do is that they put a proposal together. They say, hey, listen, we want to charge more money. And we want to charge more money because insert ridiculous reason here. They don't even really need to have like a report or anything really large. Like they just can say, hey, we want this much more money. For example, my utility just finished a rate case and they wanted to increase the rates by 16%. And one of the reasons why they said that is because they need money to tear down trees. They say that sometimes, especially in the summertime, sometimes the trees fall down and they hit the wires. So then they have to find money to cut the trees down. So they want to increase how much the customers pay because of that. But that's one of their reasons. They can make stuff up. And they put this proposal together and then they submit it to the Public Service Commission, who is a state entity appointed by the governor of some people. Their faces on the side right here. And they determine if the utility can raise the rates or not. So they submit this proposal to the Public Service Commission, and then that starts what we call a rate case, right? And in the rate case, there are negotiations and litigation about what the Public Service Commission feels is the right way to increase prices for the delivery section of the bill. But we as consumers, we can intervene, and we are called interveners. And the interveners can intervene in the rate case and say, hey, National Grid, we actually don't want you to raise our rates because insert your own testimony here, because then I would have to move because I can't afford to live in my property if my utility bills go up, or whatever reason. And anyone can be an intervener. It's a very complicated and time-consuming process, as you guys probably know from being involved, but we can do that. And then that happens in the rate case. And then ultimately it's up to the Public Service Commission to kind of iron that out. Usually the utility is able to raise the rates. Sometimes, through the rate case, that part is decreased about how much they want to raise it. So they want to raise it 16%. Sometimes it's only 14%. But I haven't seen many cases to which they aren't able to raise it. But, we could hope, right? So I think National Grid is in the middle of the rate case. Y'all are working on that, but that's kind of how that works out. So I'm going to go over gas very quickly because a lot of the way that gas, how we relate to the gas system is very similar to the electricity one, right? So in New York State, we heat our homes mainly with methane gas and with fuel oil and kerosene, right? With a third runner-up being electricity, which is a lot higher than I thought, which is cool because if we want to move to renewables, we got to make sure that everything's electric, right? And then in fourth place, propane. Propane sucks. So methane gas gets to us very similarly to electricity. They have these big transmission lines that the people generating the gas, extracting the gas, because that's how we get gas. We ruin the planet. Gets transmitted to the utilities, and then the utilities take it to our homes, right? Y'all know how bad extractions are. Y'all know how bad that is for the planet. Y'all also know who lives the closest to where they do the extractions. We know this. All to heat our home inefficiently. For some people, they have renewable heating sources like heat pumps or geothermal. And for those people that have money to do that, they don't have to. Their gas doesn't come from anything else. It just goes directly to their homes. So they just have that system in their homes. I have this interactive map that makes my computer freeze, so I'm not going to go over it, but it's called youareheremap.org. I don't know if y'all ever played around with this. It was created by a bunch of groups that I believe mainly Sane Energy Project, which is a member of the EDA. And what this map does, you can put in your address or your city, whatever, where you live, and it tells you all the gas infrastructure that's near you. Do y'all know of any gas infrastructure or pipelines that are in Buffalo?
I'd say I
No,
don't.
I'm not aware. I'm not
Yeah.
aware of any.
I think there was one that some considerations were being made for, but we don't currently have one.
Well, I would suggest checking out the map. It makes my computer freeze when I'm on Zoom. So I'm not going to try that because then I have to then restart my computer. But when y'all have free time, look at it because it shows pipelines, but it also shows like other smaller gas infrastructure centers that may or may not be functioning, but are still kind of there, just so that we can know where the pollutants are. We can know where the potential hazards are. And one thing that's not on here is like for me, I live near the Pennsylvania border. And even though New York has banned fracking, Pennsylvania is fracking every day. And they move the compressed gas in trucks. So a lot of these compressed gas trucks go, by some of the major roads where I live. Sometimes they get into crashes and they blow up. And then homes have to be evacuated and people get poisoned, things like that. So I wish they put that on the map because you kind of want to know, where these things are, where the potential hazards are. So similar to electricity, the gas supply charges, that money goes to the big extraction companies. It doesn't go to the utilities. It's through a meter reading, right? The utilities still get their little cut for making the connection to the merchant function, but mainly that's the portion that goes to the people that are extracting the energy. And who owns who is doing the extractions, right? These are all these companies, and to be honest, I've never heard of any of these. Have y'all heard of these people? Have y'all heard of TransCanada, Dominion Energy, Chesapeake Energy? Have y'all heard of any of these?
I haven't. Canada's building a pipeline. We're trying to. That's only one.
Yes, I've heard of Enbridge very much. Criminals, a lot of them.
Right. So they set the supply price very similar to electricity. Again, they do it in a competitive gas market. We're probably the big investors for gas infrastructure are probably a part of that market as well, setting the prices. The delivery charges are also the same, right? We have a basic service charge that we have to pay regardless, even if we don't use any gas at all. Instead of kilowatt hours, they're in therms, right? That's the unit of energy. They have taxes, they have their adjustments, and they have their system benefit charges. They're owned by the wonderful utilities, right? The investor-owned monopoly utilities, right? Our wonderful Con Eds, our wonderful national grids, our nice eggs. And the prices are also set in rate cases, right? So usually when the utility does a rate case, they say, hey, we want to increase the electricity by this much and the gas by this much, and here's why. So that was a very quick overview on kind of, those two portions of the bill, how they make these prices up and who's involved, right? So now let's talk about, the social aspect of it, the actual impacts of this system. So our energy sources create climate instability, air and water pollution, and radioactive contamination. Extreme weather made worse by climate change, along with health impacts of burning fossil fuels, have cost the U.S. economy at least $240 billion a year in the past 10 years, right? So climate change is costing money and costing lives, as y'all know. And y'all also know, because you live in Buffalo, that the toxic burden is not shared equally, right? That there's racial implications. So race, even more than class, is a number one indicator for the placement of toxic facilities in this country. And communities of color and low-income communities are often hit hardest by climate change. And if we reduce how much energy that we use, that saves lives and that saves money. Nationwide, reducing electricity consumption by 15% for a single year will result in 6 lives saved each day, up to 20 billion avoided in health harms, and nearly 30,000 fewer asthma episodes. This picture makes my heart hurt how smoggy is every time I see it. So now we're gonna get into some numbers, right? Yeah, numbers people, get your calculators out. So we're gonna talk about energy cost inequities. So more than 498,000 New York households live at or below 50% of the federal poverty line. And they pay an average of 29% of their income towards their energy bills. And nearly 615,000 additional New York households live between 50% and 100% of the federal poverty line. And those and people that fall into those categories pay about 15% of their income for the energy bills. Experts say the energy bill should be no more than 6% of your income to be considered affordable. So I don't promise people I know how to do math, right? But I know what numbers look like, right? So the people that are close to the poverty line that have the least amount of money are paying a way higher percentage of their income that is already low to their energy, so to heat and cool and electrify their homes. 29 is way more than 6, right? And this has really strong impacts. So 1 in 3 households in the US face challenges in paying their bills. 11% of households keep their home at unhealthy or unsafe temperatures. 14% of households receive disconnection notices. 22% of households reduce or forwent basic necessities like food and medicine to pay bills, right? The loss of utility services is one of the primary reasons for homelessness, especially for families with children. And the lack of working utilities is a common reason for child welfare. So what happens when you can't pay your electricity bill? What happens?
You get thrown out of your home.
Yeah, you can get thrown out of your home.
You can't afford to live there, so you can't afford to pay.
Right.
They take all your assets.
They take all your assets. That's exactly what happens. You live in fear. You get that notice. I don't know if y'all utility does this, but when I get a disconnect notice, the color of the envelope is different.
Oh yeah.
So I see it in my mailbox, oh shit, that's a disconnection notice. You got to live in that fear. And then I always love this question, and I don't know if it's always appropriate, but what is some of the ways people cope with this, right? So I remember growing up and our electricity got cut off, so we had a gas stove, so we just opened the oven. What are some interesting ways that people do stuff like that?
Use candles, layer clothes.
Right.
If it's winter
Electric
outside, you can put all
blanket.
your freezer stuff in the snow.
Freezer stuff in the snow. I heard more blankets. People put plastic to insulate their windows, right? Y'all in Buffalo, y'all also cold.
Yep.
Y'all know how it gets.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So this was before COVID. So COVID definitely changed this and made it a lot worse. So here are the COVID numbers from January 2021, right? So 1,129,413 customers as of January, this January, they were 60 days or more behind on their bills. That means that they deserve a shut off notice. We are currently in a utility moratorium, so they can't really shut people off yet. But people are 60 days behind their bills or more. So but when the moratorium's over, if people's financial situation doesn't get better, they're gonna be more days behind, right? So collectively, there's over $1 billion in New York owed to the utility. The average debt per consumer is about $1,000. So this is a little nice little chart. I even highlighted National Grid for y'all for upstate. So in upstate National Grid, there's 253,350 people that are 60 days past in their bills, right? So they owe collectively 307, is that million? 463,721, this big number right here. That's how much money is owed just for National Grid upstate. Unlike all the other utilities, National Grid was nice and did not give out disconnection notices during a pandemic like they were not supposed to. Excuse me. But no one else listened. Like, have you see NYSEG, like where I live, they still sent them out even though we're in a moratorium. But National Grid did it, yay. And about 7% of customers, residential customers, are in debt. So this is where we're at in January. I think at the end of May, we will be getting some of the updated numbers for what happened now. I assume that it has gotten a lot worse because the numbers from October to January got worse, so I had to update this. So like, what are the utilities doing? Like, why aren't they doing anything about this? They're still making their money, right? The nice CEOs of National Grid are sitting there chilling in their multi-million-dollar homes. You know, they're okay. Their investors are still making profits, right? During a global pandemic, their investors are still turning profits. And why are they doing more, right? Because the investor-owned utilities, National Grid, only has a legal obligation to their investors, to their shareholders. Their main goal is to make money, which they do by building infrastructure that they then charge us more for. And where does all that money go, right? It goes to gas pipelines, either fixing them or making more. It goes to shareholder profits. It goes to customer service. Sometimes it goes to crazy things like increase in executive salaries, lawyer fees, things like that. Now, what can we do about it, right? We spend a lot of time looking at the energy bill because that's how people relate to it first, right? So that's how we relate to it first. Let's see if some of the solutions that we can do from the energy bills, right? So here are some individual solutions. We can all get energy efficiency upgrades, right? We can reduce how much energy we're using. We can all get solar on our roof, right? Like that's renewable, that's great. We can all get heat pumps. We can all get Teslas, a Tesla for everybody, right? So this is all gonna reduce the stuff that is this attainable? Like, can we do this? Like, can everybody do this? Are we giving Teslas out to people?
No.
Nope.
No, we can. There are big barriers, right? There are big barriers to some of these individual options that they tell us that we would need to combat this problem. Your bill's too high, get solar, right? There's things like upfront costs. There's things like renting your homes. There's things like that that create barriers to getting a lot of these things. So let's look a little deeper. Let's talk about some other strategies that they tell us. Oh, you can participate in community solar, right? You can do community geothermal, which I didn't know was a thing, but apparently this pilot's underway, which I think that's pretty cool. All right, but that's still not totally accessible for everybody. One thing that is accessible to most people are large system changes, right? So some of the system changes look like legislation that makes energy efficiency funding available and equitable, right? Making sure that the people that are the closest to having those high bills, that are closest to the TACA's facilities, are getting, their equitable share of state energy efficiency funds. We can get involved in rate cases, right? We can make sure that everyone throughout the state is all has the education and resources needed to intervene in these rate cases against the utility, so they don't have the opportunity to raise the rates as much as they're doing. We can really say we don't really want the utilities at all. We don't want to invest our own utilities, right? We want public power. We want New York to be able to generate its own renewable electricity that's controlled by the community, that's controlled by the public, that's democratically controlled. We can, oh, I moved the slide too fast. We can do policy fights, right? We can go lobby the Public Service Commission, making sure that energy efficiency and solar is more accessible. So we can have those individual and shared strategies like we mentioned before. And what y'all are also familiar with is that we can work and advocate for equitable energy legislation like the CCIA, right? We can do all these things. David, I don't know how community geothermal works. I had no idea until I reviewed this slide yesterday that was in there and that was a thing. I'm guessing that they would have to have either the energy usage will be offset maybe on a larger property, like not like, community solar, sometimes they have their own arrays like on a plot of land. Like maybe you can like link up to geothermal that's on people's homes. Like I'm not sure how it works. I can look into it. I've never heard of it before. So like I said in the beginning, I work for the New York Energy Democracy Alliance, or the New York EDA, and we're working on some big campaigns that really address some of these systematic changes in a very step 1, step 2, step 3 kind of sequential is the word I was looking for, in a sequential way. So first, y'all looked at that graph about how many people in New York owe all this money during a pandemic, right? So we're working on a campaign to cancel utility debt. No utility debt. No one should be accruing debt during a pandemic where they have to stay home, right? And the people that should be paying for the debt, the state shouldn't have to pay for it. It should be the utility, the people that are getting all this profit, them and their investors during a time where everybody's suffering. They shouldn't be getting their investment they promised while people are suffering because we're going through a big pandemic. And then our second campaign is our energy efficiency campaign. So what that means is that we talked about the first one being the utility debt. We want to cancel that. And then we want energy efficiency. We want to make sure that then people aren't accruing more debt because their homes are energy inefficient, right? We don't want people to have to put plastic on their windows. We want to make sure people have energy efficiency windows, right? So we're working on a piece of legislation called the Energy Efficiency, Equity, and Jobs Act that will require utilities to ensure that low-income folks and people of color receive an equitable share of energy efficiency funding through the state, and also energy efficiency jobs. And then lastly, one of our last campaigns, in the last part of the sequence, is public power. We don't want investor-owned utilities that aren't caring about the customers, aren't caring about the people, right? We want to make sure that we have a democratically controlled utility system that wants to get the best and most affordable utility in the best and most efficient way and renewable way to people that care about that first, and not their investors and their profits. So you guys are also blessed to have me at your next meeting next Monday. And in this meeting, we're going to talk about how COVID has affected things a little bit deeper. And we're going to talk about the solutions. And then we're going to kind of iron that out and kind of see what that would look like for New York State, and particularly for Buffalo. And that's it. The presentation's over. I can drink water right now.
Thank you for the presentations. That was pretty interesting. I mean it.
Well, thank you, Amber. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Thanks for making energy interesting.
Oh, that means so much. Thank you. Because this was pretty boring when I learned it the first time. It was a 2.5-hour presentation, and I was like, nah, this could be 50 minutes. Like we could do this. Like it don't have to be this long.
Did Amber, did we sit through that? Was I in that one? I think I was. I'm
You
not sure.
probably was. I was
Yeah.
asleep.
Oh, okay.
I was asleep. You might have been asleep too, because we were sitting on those couches.
Oh, the couch. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it did seem long. Yeah, no, so you made it concise and a lot easier to understand. Not to mention those rooms were very warm too. So yeah, we were sleeping. For Jessica Azulay.
All right, so definitely thank you, Amber. If anybody comes up with any questions, comments, or concerns in the meantime, and yes, Natalie, I see you want to invite other people to the meeting. Absolutely, invite them in. I will make sure to share the link to whatever the recording is going to be, and I will send out the slides as well. And I will make sure you all have Amber's email in case you come up with any new fresh questions. But until then, I will see you guys around. Thank you so much, Amber. And y'all go ahead and have the rest of your Monday.
All right. See you tomorrow.
Bye, y'all.
All right.
Thanks, Kelly.
Bye.
Friends.